Hello, everyone. My name is Franco Aurelio. I'm here back with Father Calvin Robinson. How you doing, Father?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you? It's weird being on with someone that I've followed on Instagram for a while. It's good to meet you.
Now, just out of curiosity, how did you what's the first video you found of me?
Oh gosh, I can't remember what it was, but it was something. You know what you're like. It was something quite controversial and a bit clickbaity, but it was good fun.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I try to be as markety as possible because I want good messages to reach essentially.
Yeah.
So I mean, I hope you're cool with that. I hope you think that's a good sign because it
like
did
your
reach
style.
you after all. Thank you. I appreciate that, my guy. So, Father, how did you tell me your story, in a quick nutshell. How did you become? How did you gain the title Father? What is your the Anglo-Catholic stuff, all that stuff? Give us a quick rundown of that.
Give you all of it condensed. I was in industry, straight out of university, making money, having a good time. And then I realized that actually I had to live a more fulfilled life rather than the pursuit of personal happiness. And I started looking into vocations, and I ended up becoming a school teacher, which was the start of my vocation. And I had a strong calling. This is while I was on a faith journey. I had a strong calling to ordained ministry. I discerned that calling in the Church of England and had a bit of a battle with the wokeness within the church at the end of my training and formation in seminary. I ended up leaving the Church of England, but remained an Anglican and joined the GAFCON movement of Orthodox Anglicans in communion with 85% of Anglicans around the world. I got ordained last year as a deacon. God willing, I'll be priested at some point this year. And I think that is about as quick a summary as I could give you.
Gotcha. Now this has confused me a bit. So, is that what connect? Is there any connection with the Catholic Church in that the one that you're in right now?
No. So I'm an Anglo-Catholic, meaning I see Anglicanism as the English expression of the Catholic faith.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Awesome. So with the Anglo-Catholic stuff, does that okay? So this is where we get in. This is where I want to talk about the sexual stuff, this because I think sexual immorality is rampant right now in our culture, and not just in America. I mean, America's pretty bad, but also in other countries. I know I know in Britain there's a lot of there's a lot of stuff like that going on there. Just all around the world, it's an infection. So. And I am of the very, very strong belief that contraception is a large enabler of it. What is the Anglo-Catholic position on artificial contraception? I'm not talking natural family planning, but artificial contraception.
Yeah, my understanding of those issues would be, I assume, exactly the same as yours, in that contraception is a major issue and probably the start of many of these sexual ethics issues because it divorces the sexual act, the conjugal act, from holy matrimony. So it removes the consequences of that. The purposes, marriage is obviously between one man and one woman, and the purpose of sex being an act that is constrained within that union is because one of the consequences of it is that you are open to being blessed by God with children, and it's the start of a family for the greater worship of God. Now, the moment you take God out of the situation, sex becomes all about personal pleasure, and and then you remove it from the marital situation too, and it becomes literally just about you, and you're divorcing the magic of it and the union between you and your wife, or you and your husband, and God, and you're telling God you want him to have no part in your relationship, and therefore it is the breakdown of society, and why we're seeing a massive increase in abortions, massive decrease in marriages, massive increase in loneliness, unhappiness, and fatherlessness, and a lot of it stems from the acceptance of contraception.
Yeah, exactly. I know when I first heard about how the church, how it states that contraception is intrinsically evil. When I first saw that, I'm like, whoa. Well, I don't know if I can accept that, because I was still looking into Catholicism. I wasn't totally deep dive into it. But when I first saw that, I'm like, I don't know if I can that's actually kind of crazy, but yeah, I mean, from everything that you just said, it just makes total logical sense. It's just, the way I see it, it's and some people might find this a little vulgar, but I think the analogy works. It is a middle finger to God's intention of the sacred act of sex, right? Because like what you said, it separates the procreative aspect from sex, right? Like it's like you said, it's for both procreative and for the unitive aspect. Once you take one of those out, because like right now we also have the inverse as well, where they take out the unitive aspect, whereas like what the banks where they can donate sperm or something like that. Like, what do you think about that stuff? Because I haven't done like apologetics for that before, but I know I've heard about that, like sort of like that inverse effect.
It's all against God's order, all of it. Yeah. And people paint it as liberating, it's about freedom. And it absolutely is about freedom. You're right. It's about the freedom to sin. And that's a freedom that we should avoid at all costs. So if something goes against God's order, then we should avoid it. And artificial insemination is one of those areas. Sperm donors is one. Surrogates is another. The idea of letting a child come to full term and then divorcing that child of its mother is just objectively evil. But we paint these things as a freeing gift. Like, why shouldn't we be able to choose what we want to do? And it all comes down to original sin. It comes back to the Garden of Eden. Why shouldn't we be able to choose? Why should we not be able to eat of that apple? Because God has given us order and he's told us what is good. If we don't follow what is good, then we are sinning. If we follow what is evil, then we are sinning.
Yeah. No, totally right. This is pretty much all Satanism. It's like it's a liberating the soul from all restraints, whether that may be a duty to God, to your family, to anything that might cause you to restrain yourself to any extent. And I think that like, people that there's like, these things of abortion, contraception, pornography, these are stuff this is stuff that is still kind of debated upon, unfortunately, with so many people in our culture. But there are things that that our culture like can acknowledge that like is wrong, like murder, like rape, like child trafficking. But I think that the culture kind of lacks, I think some people might think that I'm making a stretch here, but I think it totally makes the connection. That when we acknowledge these things as being bad, we acknowledge that we have to restrain the self to a certain extent. If you want to traffic children for money, you can't do that just because you feel like it, right? If you want to rape a woman, you can't just do that because you feel like it, right? So that we understand in that sense that there are certain things that we have to restrain our, like if we were to have any of those distorted desires at all. So doesn't that logically follow that there are going to be some other things that might not be so clear and cut like those things that we have to restrain ourselves in? And I think, and like that's why, like, I talk about, I was doing some like some promotion for the movie Sound of Freedom. Have you heard of that movie?
I have indeed.
You have indeed.
It's a very, very important movie, and it's being suppressed for all the right reasons.
Let's go. Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah. So Sound of Freedom, right? I made a video, the first video that I did promoting it. I was literally talking about how, like this, it makes sense in how in such a liberalized world, you can have this stuff being rampant because people like the foundation of liberalism is literally just liberating the self from anything else. So it's such a selfish mindset, and from that selfish mindset, it sprouts all of these other degeneracies essentially. Because again, pride is the root of all evil. So that's where it's like. So I want to talk about Sound of Freedom. Have you like? So what did you think about the movie?
There's so much you've just said that I want to come back on because you're hitting.
No, okay, go back on it. Go back.
The relative morality, the idea that we understand that to kill our brother is a bad thing. And we all get that, regardless of our religion. But there are areas that we need religion to give us that moral compass, because without it, we don't know good from bad. We don't know good from evil. This is why we have the faith, right? This is why it was revealed to us in this way. And a lot of that comes back to what we were saying about contraception, because what many people don't realize is that the pill that is being pushed upon young women as a given, like, of course, all women should go on the pill. Of course they should. Why? Why should they? Because if they're waiting until they're married before they have sex, then they don't need to be on the pill ever. But what does the pill do? Well, it changes your chemistry. The pill changes the way that women perceive men. It changes who they're attracted to. It makes a woman less attracted to a masculine, typical, traditional male, like an alpha male. Why is that? Likewise,
like Father Calvin Robinson.
On the other end of the spectrum, we have pornography, which is changing the chemistry of young boys' brains. It's making young men think, well, be less attracted to traditionally feminine women. So if men are no longer attracted to feminine women and women are no longer attracted to masculine men, what's happening is that women are becoming more masculine and men are becoming more effeminate. And we're seeing this in our culture. This is why the contraception is satanic. And again, you talked about restraint. Like, we need to have restraint in our lives. This is why we call God our Father. He sets the boundaries. That's a patriarchal thing. He loves us with a firm love. It's different to a maternal love. He says, you can be free within these bounds. If you break those bounds, there are consequences. That's what a good father does.
Exactly.
And this is why I'm so supportive. And you mentioned, thank you for bringing up the Sound of Freedom. I tried to get them on my TV show on Saturday, just gone, but I couldn't because there's a stupid strike, an actor's strike or something. So most people aren't allowed to do promo right now. But it's such an important movie. And you'll see that the mainstream media are either not talking about it or talking it down. Whereas at the same time, they'll promote things like Cuties on Netflix that is sexualizing young girls. So you've got to ask the question, why would someone approve of the sexualization of young girls, but be derogatory towards something that is promoting safety and safeguarding around children and exposing the evils of exploitation?
Yeah, exactly. No, exactly right. And the thing with, and I want to touch back on like the whole, the analogy made of like the father, right? Yeah. It's like, a father cares for his children. That's what I've never, like, I find it so weird. Well, I don't find it weird because I understand like why they do it, but, it's still so imperative that we talk well about authority in our culture, because so much of our culture is so scared of the term authority. Like they flinch when they hear it, almost as if like it's as if like, well, that, right? Why? Because like, what's up?
You know why though? Like the whole purpose, the reason. Who flinches at the truth? Demons, right? Who flinches at the name of Christ? Demons. Like the whole anti-authority movement is demonic. The same as these people that say smash the patriarchy, destroy the patriarchy. What they're saying is let's attack God himself, because he is the ultimate patriarch. He is the ultimate authority. Without authority, we have disorder, we have chaos. God gives us order. Anyone that wants to attack authority and patriarchy is attacking God.
Exactly, because authority, like, I want to use the parent example that you did, that you said, because I think this applies to like practically everything. It applies to our religion. It applies to our local homes. Like, if you have a child, you're not going to tell your child, "Oh, do whatever you want," right? You're gonna set give that child boundaries. You're gonna tell that child, "Hey, you're not supposed to eat like all this candy. You're not supposed to play on the ledge of this balcony," right? And if they do, you might give them a punishment so they can learn that to not do it again, right? So that is like it's such a great analogy with God, because like it's the Father. If you look at the commandments, it's very much like love one another, like don't covet your neighbor's wife. It's like it looks very much like a father giving instructions to his children, right? Giving rules for his children. And it's not, and I think a lot of people like might have resentment towards their earthly fathers. And so they might, apply that to our heavenly Father, which is, it's not a very great way to tie imperfect being to a perfect being, but I understand it. However, it is also important for them to acknowledge that our perfect Father, he actually like loves us unconditionally, and we are supposed to love him back unconditionally as well, even if it might be hard to love our earthly father back unconditionally. And that's the thing, right? Our heavenly Father has perfect knowledge, has perfect rules. Our earthly father might not have that, but that's why it's important to understand that difference. And hey, authority, it's a great thing. If you are an authoritarian, you care about people. If you are not, then you don't really care about people because you don't really care if they get hurt or not.
And this is such an important point. So the Church of England very recently has been saying, to call God our Father is problematic because people have difficult situations in their real life and, in their earthly life at least, and they have difficult relationships with their earthly father. So let's consider, do we have to call our Father? It's like, well, yes, we do, because God literally told us how. He told us his preferred pronouns, right? He told us how to refer to him. Of course, God is genderless. He's bigger than gender. However, Jesus Christ, fully man and fully God, told us to refer to our Heavenly Father as our Father. He gave us the prayer to use. He gave us the words literally to use. So it's demonic to suggest we should refer to God as anything other than our Father, or to suggest that our Father is problematic. But they should flip that around, like you said. If you have a troubling experience with your earthly father, at least you know your perfect heavenly Father is always there for you, and you'll never have a troubling experience with him. He is perfect in every way, and he is there for us to provide and protect for us as a true father would. So it's not a case of if your earthly father lets you down, your heavenly Father is going to too. It's no, if your earthly father lets you down, that's okay, because you have a better Father. You have the one true Father.
Exactly. It's so true. And I think that, I really feel bad for a lot of people that have like abusive fathers. I mean, like I was pretty privileged to like, be blessed with a pretty good father. That's not to say like, other people weren't blessed with it. It's like, it's just, free will that comes into terms, there's like a lot of factors with free will, but I was pretty lucky to have a good father. And I think that with the abusiveness, it's such a hard thing to chip away from when you're trying to get these people back into like the faith, which is why I always think it's kind of like imperative, with like liberalism and stuff like that. I understand there's like a lot of things rooted in pride there, but I also understand there's like a lot of people that might just be ignorant. And so I definitely want to like to keep pushing in every video, like to have a little bit more compassion towards these people, to try to understand where they're coming from, and to from there give a remedy by knowing their exact problem. Pretty much, it's kind of like how a doctor diagnoses a problem and like gives the exact remedy for it, right? So I'm not trying to say like, oh, just let them be or whatever. I'm like, no. I'm not trying to say be tolerant. I'm trying to say be patient, essentially, because there is a difference. Tolerance, from what I understand, is that it's like the uninterrupted. You're letting something go uninterrupted, right? If you have if I were to give advice to somebody, that would be an interruption to like whatever they're doing. If patience, however, is knowing that you are trying to do something about this, right, and being patient with this person, and having the having the self-control to be like, okay, I'm getting to work on this person, but it's going to take some time, essentially. So I think there's a big difference. Don't be tolerant, be patient.
Absolutely. Tolerance is not a Christian virtue. It's often pushed as a virtue that we should all subscribe to, but it's not a Christian virtue. God told us to be intolerant of evil, and that's what we should do. But you're right, we should be patient, we should be loving, and we should diagnose the problem. The answer is always found in Jesus Christ, but diagnosing the problem enables us to articulate Jesus in a way that people can hear him.
Yes, it's so true. And I actually want to talk about being intolerant towards evil. Oh, Father, I think we agree on a lot of things. Okay, so with the intolerance towards evil, I am like of the impression that like with our current form of government, at least the ones that are being largely practiced right now in the entire world, and I do think that this is important to talk about, because I take my faith very seriously, and I take evangelizing very seriously, and I think that it's very important as Catholics to literally trash on democracy as much as humanly possible. And the reason being is because our church does not operate in that way. It does not. It operates in a very hierarchical system. And with the way it operates, right, it's like if you're living in a country where it's not anywhere reflective of that, but instead it's a very decentralized authority. It's a very like, okay, we all get one vote, we all get like all this stuff, right? It's like a very more liberalized form of like governing, right? Governing by the people and letting the majority of people reign pretty much, instead of a more minority set case. It's like, that does not open the ways for the human brain, or at least that doesn't get them so comfy with hearing how the church governs. Because you're like, if they go from that to looking at how the church governs, they're like, whoa, that looks a little really authoritarian, right? And then that's when it gets a little harder for them. Because I've talked to people that say like, I don't know if I can get down with the whole system of how the church operates, right? They agree with like a lot of stuff that the church that talks about, but then on that one pillar, they're like, I don't know about that part. So I'm like, so that's why for me it's very important. I'm like, okay, like I'm not gonna say explicitly what I'm trying to say right now, because I don't think that my audience is so much ready for it. But all I'll say is this: democracy has so many flaws, and the power and like the authority and the authority and power that came with monarchies, that never faded, that never went away when democracies came into place. It just came a million times harder to detect, because rather than having one guy at the top that you can put the blame on pretty much, and maybe his like immediate family members or people that might be influencing him, now you have a whole two-party system. You have a whole lot of other mega corporations that are getting involved with that. So now if you were to vote away the president, you have a whole cloud of figures, of shadowy figures that you have no idea who's the one in control, and you have no idea who is the one that you have to vote out or to, make sure to get out of office or whatever. So to me, I think that's a very important topic. But what do you think about all that I just talked about?
That's good. There's something in that. I don't know if democracy is inherently good or bad. I don't know about that yet, but I do think people have made an idol of democracy. I think that's bad, because it doesn't work in and of itself, and it isn't the be all and end all. It's a means to an end, and people make it the end. I don't live in a true democracy. I live in a constitutional monarchy, but I think a monarchical system is better because monarchs are God ordained. Kings are, we believe as Christian in the divine right of kings, and that God gives us the leaders that we deserve at the time. And even as a non-Brit, you live in a kind of a theocracy as a Roman Catholic, right? Because your Holy Father, your Pope, is your emperor king.
That's literally it. That's like, he's the absolute monarch of the church, essentially. Like, well, first the college of bishops.
I buzzed twice. I'm sorry, honestly.
Go ahead. You're good.
Sorry, that never happens, and now it's happened twice in one interview.
You're okay, man. You're okay. Satan trying to divert the topics, but it's okay. I remember pretty well. Anyways, so yeah, the Pope reigns as absolute monarch, but the way that the Pope is elected though, and the Pope is elected by a college of bishops. However, when he's elected, it's not as if like, all right, let's get everybody in the church that's baptized Catholic to vote, to vote on who the Pope should be. It's like, no, that's like dumb, right? They get like a select group, which is the college of bishops, and they have them vote on who the Pope should be, right? And then after that, the Pope reigns as absolute monarch, and that's why it's like, and that's why when you hear about like the Synod of Bishops, like where the Pope is like getting some like questionable figures to come in and vote in this synod, right, of synodality or whatever, right? It's like, of course, I totally understand that, like, why people would be concerned from that. However, at the same time, it's like, listen. You do know he's a monarch, right? He doesn't have to get like, even if they decide to vote on something, that has no effect on the church. Even if there's some majority of like some like heresy like comes in, it's like that doesn't mean that's going to affect canon law to any extent, right? So it's like that's why I love about the papacy. It's like absolute power in the sense of like he cannot teach error, essentially. Now, of course, as an Anglo Catholic, maybe you might disagree on that, but yeah, like that's pretty much where I'm coming from. Like, yeah, it's pretty much an absolute monarchy in the church.
Yeah, I mean, I would disagree with that, and I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. I wouldn't recognize the Pope as a monarch. I see that's the role he takes now, but traditionally I wouldn't. I would see, when I look back at the Church Fathers and their teachings, and when I look back at how the apostles interacted, I would say each bishop has almost independent authority directly from their apostolic succession, and that the Pope is the first among equals, but not necessarily an absolute ruler. So that's to me, that's quite a modern innovation, Council of Trent, Vatican I era. But that's one of the few areas we'd probably disagree.
Yeah, no, for sure. I honestly, I don't know too much about like the Church Fathers. Like, I know,
the
like,
comments are going to be going nuts on this part, by the way.
What's up?
The comments will be going nuts at this conversation right now.
No, you're fine. I mean, you're a really solid guy. I mean, I don't think they'll give you too much crap. But the thing with like the Church Fathers, I do want to like learn more about that stuff, because like I don't know too much apologetics on that sense. But I mean, as long as we're both cool with the one anchor point system on how a government should be run, I think we're pretty much on the right mindset. Because I mean,
I'm willing to be corrected as well. If people can show me either in the early Church Fathers' teachings or in the scriptures where the Pope has ultimate authority, I'm happy to be corrected. But just my experience and my reading so far suggests that he was respected, and it's a kind of a legendary seat, but not necessarily the ruler king that he's become.
Now I'm like regretting that I didn't do any more research on this, because I'm like, maybe I could have read Father Calvin Robbins, but it's fine. Well, I want to jump back on the thing about like the democracy stuff, right? So with that form of government, right? I think a lot of people back in the medieval times, right? The church is operating with so many different like kings and monarchs and stuff like that. So it's like the term of like, and it's good that you mentioned like modernity, because I think that like this whole system of just a bunch of, everybody gets a vote, every man, every woman, all this stuff. It's like, it's such a modern thing. Because I think that back then, just like atheism, people recognized that this is dumb. Like, this is really, really dumb. Like, how are you going to, this is not a good way to operate, essentially. Because, everybody understood that there's like natural reason. You can find God, the spirit always tugging you, right? With atheism, everybody can understand that, like, yeah, why would you let majority of people vote? Majority of people are like not wise. If you can see this in countless moments throughout history. You can see this in times in the Bible where the majority votes for Barnabas to be freed and not Jesus, right? It's like you can see a lot of times where the majority gets it wrong. The majority is not wise. And everybody knows that. I'm pretty sure everybody knows that intrinsically. Like, yeah, the majority is not wise. It's a minority that is wise.
We often fall to the tyranny of the majority, absolutely. And because we're naturally sheep. This is why we're referred to as sheep in the scriptures. And we're to be led by good shepherds. And when bad shepherds take over, things go awry. And, exactly. This is the lesson from World War II in that, everyone assumes that they would be the guy that stands up to the Nazis and doesn't do the Heil Hitler. But we know from history that actually the vast majority would go along with it and did go along with it. Yeah. And this is the lesson from the Bible. You're right, that we should take away from the lessons of the scriptures that we would be there going, crucify him. We wouldn't be on Christ's side. We like to think we would be. And that's our internal arrogance. But actually, if Christ was with us today, we would be shouting, crucify him. That's the lesson that we need to learn from.
Yeah, exactly. It's so true. Because I think that, I think Jordan Peterson put this in into a good analogy. I don't know. Actually, no, it wasn't Jordan Peterson. It was one of my counselors. He talked about how it's different. It's different to look at a desert through a movie or whatever. It'd be look at a desert in a movie and being in the actual desert, right? And actually being in the action itself. It's totally different, right? It's the same thing with with cops, right? It's when cops are having to fight crime or whatever, right? It's totally different looking at it through your screen and seeing oh, you could have done this. But when you're in the moment, when you're there, completely different. And people get surprised, and I don't know. What do you think about BLM, by the way? I see you have an afro. What do you think about BLM?
I think BLM is problematic because they preach an anti-Christian rhetoric. I think Black Lives Matter came from essentially neo-Marxism, right? It's critical race theory. And critical race theory, queer theory, gender theory, they're all modern Marxism. And Marxism is Satanism. It is about destroying the patriarchy, destroying authority. It's all an affront to God. And it's a way of breaking down our way of life, destroying Western civilization by stripping it of Christianity, by attacking faith and family. It's quite clearly the goal of communism is to rid us of God.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Yeah, no, I totally agree. That's actually one of the things that got me into politics itself. Actually, before I even became Christian, I was or reverted back to it, I guess. The whole BLM. I think that's a lot of people that in America that got back into it with George Floyd. Because with George Floyd, everybody got it really just I feel like everything became much more heavily politically influenced after that. Because you had
George Floyd. He was canonized.
Saint George Floyd. Wait, is that true?
No. But it's the way they treat him. He's he was a martyr. The guy was a drug-addled abuser. He was not a nice guy. He was a convicted criminal. And people celebrate him as a hero. And I think they used him to catalyze a race riot, essentially.
Yeah, no, and I also know that there was there's also some white guy that got I think he also had a cop's knee on his neck. You can see the recording. There was from what I heard, there's them laughing and stuff like that. And I think it's even they have the knee on his neck even longer than Floyd. And where's the media outrage on that? There's not any of it, right? And of course we can get into the stats and all that stuff. But yeah, BLM, I learned pretty quickly that it was a huge front. Although I was but before that I was kind of we need a new. We need a new leader. We need a new MLK for BLM. I was talking about all that stuff, and now I'm oh boy, I cleaned up my act pretty quickly, pretty much. But yeah, no, now I do want to talk about speaking on political issues. Now I know this is not so much of a moral thing on church stuff. Well, I mean, it can get pretty moral if you think of consent and whatnot. But what do you think? What does Father Calvin Robinson think about COVID?